Chapter 529. The research continued even after this point. Uday quickly flipped through the pages, skimming their contents. The author had presented his research anonymously and seemed to have attempted various magic experiments. However, the tales woven from archaic jargon and complex magical terminology didn't particularly interest either. Even if something important was hidden among these lines, he believed that Anon would probably be better at discerning it than he was. Anon would get mad if he heard me say that, but oh well. Unabashedly, he continued reading until he reached the last page. There, a few hasty sentences were scribbled. Suffering from a terminal illness brings forth various regrets. Although my research yielded practical gains, it did not clearly provide the answers I sought. After my father's death, the only one who held the same questions was my spiritual father. What did he gain? Where is he now after leaving Gillandar Hall with the scripture? I leave this here because I believe he may return someday. If it's him, he will undoubtedly decipher everything written here. With those telling lines, the research journal came to a close. Kishir had also added his own notes at the end, writing, Gillandar seems to be a word from an ancient language, but its precise meaning is unclear. The last sentence is entirely in archaic script and the ink is smudged. The reason for this is unknown. Archmage Luma disappeared from the empire a few years after the death of the first emperor. Though he is said to have a little to do with the temples or faith, the truth is unknown. Thus, the part about him leaving with the scriptures is somewhat enigmatic. Could the scripture symbolize something else? He pondered but couldn't come up with an answer. However, another phrase caught Yudhir's attention more than anything else. After my father's death. Who else could be the father of the first Duke Dane, if not the famous founder and first emperor of Or? It's hard to imagine how the death of the first emperor could impact both this research and Archmage Luma, but I suppose it's worth looking into. He wondered if this was the same matter that Anon had been concerned about. The first Duke Dane, who sought the origins of monsters, Luma, who researched time reversal, their enigmatic confrontation, and the first emperor of Or. Names from a past that should have no relation to Yudhir Ale, who was living 1,000 years later. Yudhir stayed at the last page laid out before him and finally closed the book. It was then that he noticed a very faint imprint on the back black page. What's this? Focusing his eyes, he saw that the imprint was left by a pen tip that hadn't been inked. As he traced it with his gaze, his eyes abruptly halted. Yudhir Ale. The moment he realized that the faint imprint spelled his name, an indescribable sensation surged through him, making his blood rush and his heart pound furiously. The markings were in Kishir's handwriting, albeit in a different language. Yudhir gently touched the spot where his own name was written with the tip of a dried ink pen. He imagined the man who had written his name one character at a time after completing the translation. A neat repetition, but a scribble that would be invisible unless one paid close attention. As he felt the texture through his fingertips, he was reminded of Kishir's voice calling him out. At the same time, it was as if a small current sparked through them. ... Yudhir blinked, lifting his finger, then furrowed his brow and lowered his head. Kishir had written this translation while Yudhir had left for a few hours under the pretext of meeting Anon. Imagining him writing it down as he waited for Yudhir's turn, and even inscribing Yudhir's name in an unnoticeable spot with any time he had left, made it impossible for Yudhir to repress his sentimental feelings without biting his lip, especially when he considered that in some way the waiting continued even now. Yudhir thought of Kishir's red eyes, which prioritized Yudhir over any other questions or waiting. He then took a deep breath and made up his mind. Anon told me to come soon. It wouldn't matter if that meant today, would it? You look busy. I thought you would come a few days later. What brings you so quickly? I just finished reading the translation the commander gave me, so I was curious. All right, come in. Anon's room in the cavalry was located right next to the medical division. It was an optimal location to both take care of several injured patients and sense the presence of unexpected visitors at any time. As Yudhir entered the room, which smelled strongly of dried herbs, he got straight to the point. Did you find anything from the journal? If you have read it all, you would know. It's because of what's written at the very end. Anon fetched the original journal and opened it. He pointed to the last page. First, this, Gillandar Hall. I know where it is. What? Is the name of the house where Luma stayed while conducting his research. To be precise, it was until I woke up. Anon nonchalantly revealed the identity of Gillandar Hall, ignoring Yudhir's greatly altered expression as he continued speaking. I was planning to go there soon anyway. Thought there might be something useful. Can you go? I can. Don't ask for details. Next, look at this. Why this section? This time, Anon pointed to the sentence. If it's him, he would naturally understand what's written here. This part is written in enchanted ink. It's obscured by multiple layers of illusions, Luma style. Unless you know Luma's magic well, like me, you won't be able to understand it. Oh. It then occurred to Yudhir that Kishir had noted that he could not figure out why that particular sentence was written in a hazy and complex manner. The commander had also marked that sentence as strange. Really? He's not deeply schooled in magic, yet he noticed that? Anon's expression changed very oddly before he scowled. Whatever. Anyway, when you break it down, it reveals this. As Anon brushed the sentence in a peculiar way, claiming that even though he couldn't perform magic, he could decode this, new text appeared on the previously blank page beside it. At a glance, it seemed to be quite a significant amount, covering multiple pages. The journal appeared to be left unfinished, as if its author had died before using up all the paper. As it turned out, however, there were more hidden in the empty pages. After a certain amount of time, it will disappear, so it won't last much longer. The guy who wrote this journal left his thoughts freely penned before he died. From my perspective, this is what really matters to you. The tension sharply escalated upon hearing these words. What does it say? You may recall I once mentioned that maybe Luma began to research after encountering someone like you, a person who could travel back in time. Do you remember? I remember. If we assume that everything written here is based on facts, then that person might be the first emperor of this land. It was a shocking statement. Yudhir recalled the writings of the first Duke Dane, who wrote that after his father's death. He and his spiritual father, his mentor, had been wondering the same thing. Yudhir slowly opened his mouth. You are saying that the first emperor might have been like me? How? Are you sure? I can't guarantee its accuracy. What's important is that it seems both the author of the journal and the Luma believed so. The revelation felt so unrealistic, so absurd, as it was utterly unexpected. I almost want to ask if I have read something wrong. However, Yudhir calmed himself, realizing that his own experiences would sound no less implausible to others.